Great. Well, today I'm joined with me with a group of extraordinary individuals who are contributing directly to the continuation and benefit of the Assyrian cause. Recently, headlines I've read: State Board of Education approves Assyrian Genocide curriculum for statewide implementation in Illinois. So first and foremost, I want to thank you guys for joining me today. We have a great panel with us, and Dr. Ramina Judju will open up the floor with basically explaining how the SAFO Center played a direct role into developing the curriculum and getting it rolled out.
Thank you, Emmanuel. Shalom aloch and shalom aloch, Emmanuel. I hope everyone's well. Thank you for this opportunity. As you know, the biggest news that we had for SAFO Center Arizona chapter this year was that Illinois State Board of Education approved the Assyrian Genocide curriculum for high schools in Illinois. So we're thrilled to be talking about it. And I'm thrilled to be here with three individuals who helped us accomplish this big task. Without them, we couldn't have done it. As you know, just a little story about the background. As you know, we as SAFO Center Arizona chapter reached out to Dr. Erin Hughes sometime in 2021 to see if she would write a curriculum for us. Of course, she wanted to collaborate with known scholars like Professor Hannibal Travis. So the two of them started working sometime in 2022. And by May of 2024, the curriculum was complete. It was submitted to the task force from Arizona Department of Education, and it was approved in August of last year. So Arizona became the first state that approved the curriculum on Assyrian genocide that can be taught in high schools from grades 7 to 12. And this is in compliance with a bill that mandates that Holocaust and other genocides to be taught in the state of Arizona. Before we completed the curriculum, though, I reached out to Ms. Naima Abraham in 2023, and I was asking her how we can also concurrently implement this in Illinois. And she said, I have just the right person to put you in touch with so that she can help us. And that was Ms. Ramina Samuel, who's here with us today. And Ramina actually sent me the link to Illinois State Board of Education. And what I noticed was that there were many links to several different curricula, anywhere from Holocaust to Rwandan genocide to Bosnian genocide. But there was very little, right at the very bottom of the page, about Assyrian genocide. They only had maybe a few articles. There were good articles. Some of them were actually written by Professor Travis, but there was no link to an actual curriculum. So Naima and I reconnected again earlier this year. She put me in touch with Dr. Stephen Isoya, who connected us with the right people at the Department of Education in Illinois. And while we were working, Ramina reached out to us again, and she said, oh, by the way, I've been working on something similar, and Honorable Arthur Sergon has been working on something similar. And we thought, what a great opportunity for us to join forces for a final push. And that's what happened. We joined forces. We all got on the same page. And though they all continued working with their connections, but we were all on the same page. And literally, I want to say within a few weeks, it got approved in Illinois. And this is a wonderful accomplishment, which we couldn't have done without these wonderful individuals. But really, congratulations. I want to congratulate all the Assyrians in Illinois. This is a fantastic accomplishment for them. And I'm going to leave it up to them to tell their stories now.
Yeah, before we move on, Dr. Ramina, why is it important that American students need to understand this curriculum in the first place?
You know, Emmanuel, it's very important because they don't even know who Assyrians are. We know who we are, but they don't know. Other people don't know who we are. So it's on us to educate others. And this is what SAFO Center does. We advocate, we work with politicians, policymakers, and we educate. We have multiple platforms, educational platforms that we work with, from high schools to colleges. And this was absolutely necessary.
Got it. Thank you for that rundown. So let's move on to our first panelist, Naima. So I'm very curious, was there any roadblocks or anything in the way of getting this curriculum passed in the first place, or was it pretty much smooth sailing?
Surprisingly, it was really seamless. And, I give a lot of that credit to the fact that we have an established relationship with the board president of Illinois School Board here, and Dr. Isoye. He actually was the superintendent when I was on the school board, and I have been serving on the school board for 8 years. So we have a very close personal relationship. And so it was very easy for me to reach out to him being the chair of the school board of Illinois. It was just like it was like all the stars aligned somehow. But we were able to talk to him and say, hey, Dr. Isoye, this is what we want to do. What do we have to do? And he's worked with us initially on passing the Assyrian language and heritage classes. So he's very familiar with the process because that was like the foundation for what we wanted to do now. And he looked at that and he said, you know what, we don't even have to go through those challenges that we did with the Assyrian language class because, that was a policy we had to implement. This is already a policy. So in 1990, the Holocaust studies actually expanded to include other genocides. And that was the catalyst to helping us to establish the Assyrian genocide this time around. So all we had to do was reach out to him. He had us reach out to the board review board that reviews these documents and curriculums to make sure they're in alignment with the teaching expectations. And it was that simple. We got the documents before the review board, and like Dr. Ramina Jaju just said, within weeks, they came back to us and said, hey, yeah, you guys are on. The documents have been uploaded, and whoever wants to teach this curriculum in their schools, it's ready. Just download it and teach it. So it was that easy. Surprisingly, it was that easy.
Now, my curiosity takes me to can what you've done, can that be replicated to other states or even countries at that? Could other boards of education adopt the tactics that you've implemented to get this curriculum into different school zones in different states?
So in the state of in America, every state has their own educational policies and regulations. And Illinois is very much different than Arizona or California. And we learned this when we were trying to push through the Syrian language and heritage class. And so, can it be replicated? It can. I'm very confident that it can because we in Illinois have some of the strongest regulations and criteria when it comes to education. So, my guess is that yes, it can be done, but you would have to look at each state because they have their own unique pathways to these kind of initiatives.
And what advice would you give to people who are trying to build those connections in the education sector? What would you tell them to help expedite this process? Because it sounds like your network, your expansive network at that, helped get this pushed pretty seamlessly, like you said.
100%. Relationships, networking is the key. And that's what we have learned here in Illinois. They say it takes 2.5 generations to become more involved in the greater community, in the broader community. And I've lived in the United States for 51 years, and I can tell you that that is honestly true. I have seen the Syrian community and communities like ours become more and more active in the last decade than I have my entire lifetime. And it is essentially because of these relationships. We have to get to the leadership table. One of the things that you hear when you try to get into elected office is if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. And it's 100% true. To make anything happen, you need to be at the leadership table because we have no voice unless somebody is there to advocate for us. Ramina Samuel advocates at the school level. So you know what that's about. Ator is right an elected official. I became elected. And those are the relationships that we've built with state representatives because when you're in those rooms, it's really instrumental that have impact on policy. And that's how we did it. I've been advocating for 10 years. Ator has gotten on the scene probably in the last 5 years. Ramina Samuel has gotten into this, playground that we've been hanging out with probably for the past 8 years. And so collectively, the last decade, we've been able to build these relationships and get these initiatives passed. But that's what it takes. Run for office, build those relationships with elected officials, get into administrative agencies because that's how you build your agency to get things done.
Understood. And before we move on to Ramina Samuel, one last question for you, Naima, as of right now. What are your next steps? What are your next moves regarding the rollout of this curriculum? Do you want to take a step back and let the next people take charge, or are you going to be playing more of an active role? Excuse me.
So my role was on the higher levels aside, which was the policy to make sure that it was out there for schools to be able to access if they wanted to teach this. And it not if they want to teach it, they should teach it. But my role is pretty much done. But for people like Ramina Samuel, who is at the campus at the school, this is where you could have ears and eyes and make sure that the Assyrian genocide is being taught like it should be. So I think
Mhm.
that's how it works. Once it's there, you have to have eyes on it to make sure that it is being taught, and that takes representation at the school level.
Right. Yeah. So let's move on to Ramina Samuel. Thank you so much, Naima. So, like Naima just said, you're actually at the school level. You're in these buildings. You teach the curriculums. You understand how the internal functionalities of the schools work. And so, when I was a student in college, I would look at classes and say to myself, "What's in it for me? Why should I take this class?" And a lot of times, to be honest with you, it was to get credit so I can graduate. Right. So now from a perspective of a child who's entering into a school or a teacher who may be considering teaching this, what's the incentive to them to teach this curriculum and why should people take it?
So I do want to start with what is it for in general for schools? Why do they have to teach the Assyrian genocide curriculum? Many districts have what we call like DEI mandates, and these DEIs are basically the diversity and equity inclusion mandates, and also have cultural competency goals. So by providing an inclusive curriculum, they are able to meet these objectives of cultural competency. Not only that, it provides them an opportunity to partner with agencies, academic institutions, or organizations that have a main focus in genocide studies, provide them with partnership and funding opportunities. In addition to that, it provides school districts opportunities for having resources, workshops, and access to these resources to provide for professional development for their educators. And in turn, for their educators, they have access to professional development, credits, and hours towards their licenses. Not only that, they are having access to standardized material, ready lesson plans, and that saves them a lot of time to provide lessons. And provide a comprehensive, standardized, broader standard of teaching history. When it comes to our students, our Assyrian students, they are having their voice represented, their history represented, but in terms of general students, it provides them an opportunity to be critical thinkers and be a global aware citizen and be more prepared when it comes to accessing education and being prepared for college, AP exams, and not only that, they have then access to programming scholarships that are focused on genocide studies or ethnic studies. And that's a big incentive. So that's what I would say about that.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I remember when I was a student back in the day, it's a few years back now, I'm getting older. How I remember in the history books, there would be maybe a paragraph about Assyrians, and now there's a whole curriculum about it. It's amazing in such a short time where we've gotten to. Um, I guess my next question to you, Ramina, is why should kids care to take the class?
And
Non-Assyrians specifically.
yes, so it's about learning to be educated and learning to do what's ethically right, and learning to know the truth. So it's our responsibility to educate students, and in turn, usually a student is an open ears, open mind learner. And so it's about doing what's ethical and having access to that truth. And what you will be surprised is, and we've seen this with the Assyrian language and culture courses. So I am a counselor, I speak to students, I don't really teach. But I hear them, I hear what they're thinking, how they want to challenge themselves, what courses they want to select. In most cases, they are influenced by the diverse community that they're surrounded by. And they are curious and they want to learn. They want to learn about other people, they want to learn about underrepresented histories. It's a matter of access and equity. So when students have access and option, they make those selections. So it's not a matter of really the student. The only barrier we face when it comes to student selection of courses is when you have way too many options and limited, time in a schedule and limited years in a high school. I think that's more of a issue that we face, that you have so many electives and so many options, especially in the US and in diverse communities.
Right, and that's the reason why I'm asking, why do we need incentives to have kids take these classes? You want this class to pop out to them, to make them want to choose this class, because but they're bombarded by so many things that they would think that it's an easy A, so they rather take that. So we need to make these courses as extremely interesting as possible. Not just on the equity side, because we do need representation, yes, but also on the side of, this is simply interesting. I want to learn more about it selfishly so I could walk away smarter and more educated about these people, and then they can tell their friends about it. So I appreciate that perspective. Thank you, Ramina Samuel. So moving on to Autor Sergun. I also understand that you have done work to get accredited Assyrian language courses in the Illinois State Board of Education as well. So, what was the process for you in terms of implementing this course into the school districts that you're in? Was it a similar process? Did you take the same exact curriculum? Are you changing it a bit? Tell me about that process that you're going through.
Thank you for the question, Emmanuel. In terms of the curriculum and what we presented to the Illinois State Board of Education, it aligns with SAFO Center and what Naima discussed ahead of time. Just the process by which I came to introduce or recommend this being added to the course catalog was a separate path than Naima's, who had a connection through being on the Board of Education at District 219. It was through my connections and relationships that I built over the years with other elected officials in showing up for things outside of what would fall under the Assyrian kind of realm. It was at a meeting in Skokie in April where I was invited by a colleague and fellow trustee who was presenting a proclamation for the remembrance of the 50th year of the Cambodian genocide, where I was introduced to one of her colleagues who was working for the Illinois State Board of Education and mentioned that she would be proposing the Cambodian genocide curriculum and working on that through her role as she's the visiting inclusive education director for the Illinois State Board of Education. Her name is Laura Oak. And in a short, really quick conversations as they occur sometimes as elected officials, you're meeting someone and having a quick conversation. I mentioned that if there were any opportunities for us to include the Assyrian Genocide curriculum, that I would love to have a conversation with her about it. And shortly thereafter, just a few weeks later, she reached out and I had a conversation with her, and she said, it's moving quickly. We'd like to include the curriculum for the Assyrian Genocide. Do you have any resources? And my first call, of course, was to Ramina Samuel, who has been a colleague and friend. And as you mentioned, we advocated together for the Assyrian language course. And she had mentioned that Naima and Dr. Ramina Jaja were already working on this. And so we collaborated and came together, which was truly a blessing in terms of being able to put all of our heads together, all of our resources together, and try to achieve the same goal. So although we had different routes, we were working on the same thing. And it really came as a result of years of being an elected official and introducing proclamations regarding the Assyrian genocide through my platform as an elected official at the state level, at the county level, and locally in the village of Lincolnwood, where I serve as a board. Just having those connections, talking about it, and building relationships with other communities has really opened doors for us.
This is truly a historic milestone, and it's a very first step into really knocking that door down into the American school systems as to teaching what the Assyrian people really went through. And so, with that in mind, what are the next initiatives Assyrians need to take at your position, at my position, as a person who's just watching from the sides? What actions do they need to take in order to continue to advance the Assyrian future?
That is a very good question. And there are a lot of things we could be doing to advance our community, our culture, our language, other initiatives. But I would say, since we're talking about Assyrian genocide studies, I would say that SAFO Center has been a real resource to people like me, elected officials, people like Naima, people in Arizona, in Chicago, and Illinois. And I think that, to Naima's point, every state is different, but here we have a roadmap, right? And so if we can build out a infrastructure where others are coming and asking, how was this done? Where do we start? Having somewhere that they can go to, like SAFO Center. I think that we should continue on this path, continue to do outreach to different states to ensure that they're also pursuing these avenues, especially while, we are having these wins and there is significant movement in terms of advocacy and representation in these states. I think we continue on that path. And I think another part of it is, I think about my background, how I grew up, and my parents as immigrants here, the survival mode and always trying to keep up and go day by day and do these things. And I think we're finally in a position to go from surviving to thriving, to be at the table, to be recommending things on behalf of our community, asking for our haqiyat, asking for representation, asking for us to be included in curriculum, in proclamations and resolutions. It's about time that we start actively doing that. And I think what we've seen is somewhat of a roadmap that others can look to, right? And say, this is what they did in Illinois. This is what they did in Arizona. Here's what we need to do. And I think that, without putting too much pressure on SAFE, although they already are that resource center, I think that people should turn to them and say, what do we need to do, or what can we do, or how can you help us? And I think, rather than reinventing the wheel, which I feel like our community tends to do often, is try to start from the beginning and build it out, is here we have an infrastructure that we can turn to and build out of. So that's what I would say. And the last thing I'll add is that, we've had these wins in Illinois in terms of the Assyrian language class and the Assyrian genocide curriculum, is that what are we doing to ensure that these initiatives are successful in terms of long-term, making sure that we're supporting the people who are teaching the classes. What we've run into in talking to Ramina and others who are implementing these courses is that who do we have to teach these courses? How are they qualified? How are we recruiting students to be able to take these classes and make sure that there's a desire and a need for them, so that they're there long term and that we're building into them? And so I think that we need to also focus on these initiatives, build into them, give them the love and the care and the attention that they need, so that it's not just this historic win for our community, but it'll be long term, something that we can utilize and have for our people and students.
And you touched on this briefly, and I wasn't going to ask it in this interview until you mentioned it, but I think it's actually very important so that the people listening can understand. And this question goes out to anybody who's able to answer. So, how do we make sure that when a person or a teacher gets the curriculum in their hands, they're able to, as a non-Assyrian, to explain everything accurately and correctly to their students?
Emmanuel, if you don't mind, I'll answer that, only because our chapter actually has quarterly webinars where Professor Travis, Dr. Hughes, and Ms. Kim Klett actually teach the curriculum to high school teachers, anybody who wants to get accredited. So I would highly recommend that teachers or anybody who's interested in learning how to teach the curriculum or even get familiar with it, to either write to us at resolution@safocentraz.com, or even just subscribe to our website, which is the AssyrianGenocideStudies.org. They can join a subscriber list, and they will get updates as to when they can join these webinars and get themselves educated. And another great thing about these webinars is that we offer up to 3 hours of professional development hours, which most teachers need, at least in the state of Arizona, and I'm sure there's something similar to it in other states as well. So they can get free certification. And once they're trained, they go through that training, it's up to them if they want to teach it or not, or how much of it they want to teach. The lesson plans are laid out very nicely. It's very easy to follow. I've been at the webinars myself, and I highly recommend it. Recently, this past April, Dr. Hughes came to Arizona, and she held an in-person workshop for about 30 teachers, high school teachers here in Arizona at Genocide Awareness Week. And you wouldn't believe how well it was received, because this is something that they haven't heard of. They're craving something new, something interesting. Teachers that particularly teach history or English language, or anybody who teaches social studies, social sciences, they can actually benefit from this program. If I may also add, we are looking for trainers. There's a huge demand. We want to roll out a lot of in-person classes. So we want people who are hearing this to join our team, so we can actually train them to train other high school teachers.
Got it. Thank you so much for that information. Thank you guys for joining the panel today. I really appreciate it. Thank you for all of your hard work and contributions to the Assyrian community.
Thank you
Thank
all.
you for having us.
Thanks for having us.
Can I just say one last thing, because I think it's so important. And Emmanuel, like you had touched on it, you're like, how do we make sure that this? And I think everybody's on everybody's mind, and Asra, you touched on it as well. But I think adoption is one thing, right? And then continuing to utilize these materials and these documents and making sure that they're being taught. What that takes is constant engagement. So for these things to be taught at the high school level or any school, you need people on the board to make sure that it's happening. And we have people who are publishing Assyrian books all the time. We want people on, public library boards to make sure that those are being also introduced to the public. So I think that's really important. So I think adoption is one thing, but then continued utilization of these things is another layer. And the only way that you could make sure that it happens is by continuously being at the leadership table, getting on boards where these things matter.
Got it. Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Really appreciate your time and your commitment to understanding more about the Assyrian Genocide and what our people have been through. If you want more information, please visit safocenter.com, and the full article of what we just discussed is there.